I just remember moving around a lot. We stayed in the car a few times. We were always looking for a place to stay, looking for people we could stay with.
Homeless as a child.
We were in foster care for quite a period of time. My parents tried to get sober many times.
A constant cycle of housing instability.
So I remember there was a 24-hour restaurant by our house, and then I would just fall asleep on the table. And then other times it was just the bus stops that had like the overpass shelter.
A struggle from her childhood years to life as a college student.
So I was literally living on campus.
Now a Riverside County woman shares her lived experience, the plight of homeless youth, and how we can take action to help in Riverside County.
Oh, I really encourage everyone to help.
We're talking about it right now on the Service Station. Joining us right now is Monique Guerra. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're so glad that you're here, and thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your story with us. It's a powerful story. You're 23 years old, correct?
Yes.
And you work for Riverside County's Continuum of Care, which funds shelters, agencies, and organizations that provide homeless services, which is something that you've had a firsthand real-life experience with, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and when the cycle of homelessness first started in your life.
We're from Wilmington, California, small little city between Long Beach and San Pedro. And so most of us who live out there don't really go to college, and we don't really do much than stay, in the small city and work as like longshoremen, or we work for gas companies. So it's a very industrial city. And so we first experienced homelessness when we were really, really young. I probably 5, 6. I just remember moving around a lot. We were always looking for a place to stay, looking for people we could stay with. My parents really struggled to maintain a job and to maintain a stable housing, as well as struggling with mental health issues, drug and alcohol addiction. So it was really hard growing up and not knowing, right, the skills to be financially stable, to have stable housing, and then even looking for resources.
A lot, correct?
Right. So my mom was, there were periods of time where we knew it was coming. My mom would kind of just stay inside and wouldn't go anywhere. We wouldn't see my dad for a few days. And so we knew in a few more days we were going to be evicted. So we just kind of started mentally preparing for that, gathering our items. And then when it came down to it, we knew, just move on to the next place.
Where would you live? When you're homeless, where do you go?
So we didn't go to any shelters or anything. We didn't know that was a resource. It was more of staying with like friends or family, sometimes in the car. I remember, we stayed in the car a few times. And so on other occasions, I just remember my dad carrying me, and I would just kind of sleep in his arms throughout the night, and would just walk around looking for shelter or looking for somewhere to be, especially if it was raining. And so...
And you were only 5 years old.
Yeah, I was really young. But, it didn't seem too bad. It was almost like as long as I was with my family, like, homelessness isn't, too bad.
What were the root causes that you think led to this life?
I think definitely, right, the maintaining a job while having mental health issues and while dealing with a drug addiction or, while abusing alcohol. We knew that my parents would, take that before paying rent and stuff. And so sometimes, right, it's a hard decision to make. But, when you're suffering from that, now that I work with some clients or some young people who suffer from drug and alcohol abuse, right, we see that it's hard to kind of break that cycle and find, and prioritize housing, right? That's a big thing I've learned now being in my position. And so definitely just not being able to prioritize, right, even though they had kids.
And this continued on for many, many years, right? I mean, you say it started for you around age 5, but this also continued into your teenage years too. Can you get into, I guess, some of the memories that you have?
Later on, I realized that housing instability was something that just kind of, if you never learn these skills and you don't prioritize and you don't get help and reach out to programs and resources, right? It's just something that you can't just, like, it doesn't go away, right? Mm-hmm. And so up until the point that I was in college, I had experienced periods of time of just being homeless or just being on the streets or couch surfing. And so, we're all former foster youth. We were in foster care for quite a period of time. My parents tried to get sober many times, and they would go to court. And during those times, they had to find a stable housing. They had to find some sort of housing where it was safe.
When did you enter foster care? How old were you?
I was 7. And then my sister's a few years younger than I am. She's probably 5. And then my brother was a baby when he entered foster care. And so he was separated because he needed different care. And you
and your siblings were able to reunify with your parents. But that, when you and I have spoken before this recording, you talked about that alone was a cycle of trauma.
Right. Because it was the reunification and then the separation. And it was like, okay, I can, be sober and I can have stable housing for a few months. And then it was a cycle of like, now, we see my mom's mental health issues. We see the depression. We see, the withdrawal symptoms. And then we have to go back into care. And so it was really tough to just kind of be separated and then reunified. And it was almost like we were never really stable, even while the purpose of that was to have stable housing with my mom or to have stable housing in foster care. And so, especially when you're in care and you're moved to different homes, right, almost a home every month or a home every few weeks, right. So not being able to have just one stable housing location while being in care was also tough.
And so in that cycle, that continued into your teenage years?
Yeah, so I remember we were finally fully reunified with my mom when I was about 15, and I realized that I was young and I was going through a lot, and I was very angry with the world. I was angry with everyone, and at the same time, I was angry that I couldn't do more for my brother and my sister. And so I realized, one, there was no opportunity in the city that we lived in. I didn't want to work an industrial job. I didn't feel like I was getting an education to do anything more. And I didn't feel like I was going to be able to have the resources or the financial means to support my brother and my sister. And so the relationship that I had with my mom in my teenage years was really, really tough. I had a lot of support from my brother's godmother. But at the end of the day, she knew that my goal and my worry was to take care of my brother and my sister. And so regardless of the issues that I had with my mom, it was just that whole process of, like, imagine being taken away, you're in foster care, and then you see your parents struggling and you can't be with them all the time. And then you're wondering, like, why they can't get it together, and then you're now wondering why you can't get it together because now you're suffering. And so I had a lot of issues going to school. I had a lot of issues staying focused. I was just so angry all the time. And so my mom and I didn't have the best relationship. And at some point I realized, I can't be here. Like, I don't want to live here. I don't want to be in foster care, and at that point I was like, is being homeless and being on the streets better than everything else that's going on at the moment, But I couldn't take my brother and my sister with me, if that's what I was going to choose.
So you emancipated, right?
Yeah. So I went to, family. Right. I went to a nonprofit organization in Wilmington, and they had a program, and they had some law officials, and they had a social worker. And so they had people that kind of guided me through that process. And it was going to require, my mom's signature is going to require a meeting. And at that point I had just, my mom was like, if you don't want to be here, then leave. And then she grabbed my stuff, and I was like, I'm leaving then. And then. So
you're 17, you emancipate or go out on your own, for those who may not be familiar with that term. And at the point that you made that decision, what happens next? What do you do then?
So I guess when you're young, right, you think you can take on the world and you don't really think about consequences. I never felt scared. I never was like, something could happen to me on the street. It was just more of like survival instincts that kicked in, and it was like it was that feeling of I'm tired of my situation. I'm tired of being homeless. I'm tired of not knowing where I'm going to be. And, I have to do something now so that, a year from now when I turn 18 or a few years from now, I have some sort of stability in my life. And I had to think about, how can I help me and then help my brother, my sister, or how was I going to get a job? And, I knew I needed a job. I knew I needed to finish high school. And so I couch surfed. There were times where there was nobody's couch to surf on.
Where would you go?
Right. So
in scenarios like that.
So I remember there was a 24-hour restaurant by our house that I would just kind of go into like the end booth, and I would buy like a $1 coffee and just have some bread, and then I would just fall asleep on the table. Other times I would just kind of go to my high school. There was a lot of shelter. So if it was cold or if it was raining, I was able to stay under there and just kind of stay dry. And then other times it was just the bus stops that had like the overpass shelter. So I would just kind of lay on there in front of stores.
And this was all after you had emancipated from your family at age 17?
Yeah. So, when I wasn't couch surfing and
how scary.
You would think, right? I feel like it just didn't hit me, like the fear of stuff, or, someone could have stolen my backpack, or, I could have gotten robbed. Something could have happened to me. None of those thoughts crossed my mind. And I just, like I said, I was young and I felt fearless, and I was like, I'm going to survive. And survival instincts, when they kick in, right, it's that, I'm going to make it, I'm going to do it. And, I never slept 100% okay, right? I remember, right, even not getting sleep in like the wee hours of like 5 a.m. to this day sometimes is like, triggering, because I'll wake up and then I won't realize where I'm at, and then I realize I'm in my bed, or right, I'm in my house, and I'm like, okay, I'm fine, but when I get up at those hours, right, I just remember having to move. As soon as like I saw light, as soon as I heard movement, people, I knew I had to get up and move. So it was like that sleeping with like one eye open situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was always aware, and I was always like, if it comes down to it, I'm gonna fight someone, but I'm gonna survive. I'm gonna get through school, survive, and made lots of friends, and stayed with friends a few days out of the week.
And so were those the circumstances that you experienced as you were graduating high school?
Yeah. So right, it always makes me super sad, like June timeframe, to think that I was trying to find shelter. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was working. I worked 2 jobs when I was in high school. I worked after school, and then I worked on the weekend. And so I just remember, thinking I need more hours. I need to work Friday evenings. I need to work on the weekend. So I didn't really get to do a lot of high school activities. I didn't go to prom. I didn't go to any of those things. And, just making sure that my brother and my sister were okay when we were at school, and then making sure, are you going to be okay when you go back home? And they would ask me, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm sitting with a friend, or, yeah, I found, a room.
Were your siblings ever with you? Like when you're staying in these 24-hour restaurants, or you're at your high school, like you said, or at a bus stop, were your siblings ever out there overnight with you during those times?
There was a few occasions where either my mom just wasn't feeling so good, or she just she had those periods of time, that I don't care periods. And so I'd kind of just tell them, I don't know where we're going, but we're going to be together, and, I'll take you guys to school, and, I'll buy us food, and we'll be okay. So there were a few times.
You had decided, there was a decision that you made, I believe it was after you graduated high school, where you decided you weren't going to go to college because you were going to take care of your 2 siblings. What was the turning point in that? Because eventually you did end up at UC Riverside. But what was that life change for you? What happened that was the turning point?
So actually it was coming up on graduation, and I was at lunch, And I had just finished thinking about how I wasn't going to go to college because I needed a job and I needed to get us somewhere to live, and I needed to, take my brother and my sister with me. And so I thought, who can I get in contact with? I'm going to go be a longshoreman, or I'm going to work at the closest refinery to us with ConocoPhillips. I was like, I'm going to go work there and, make lots of money and we're going to be fine. And then at that moment, I got a phone call from Kenyon Whitman, who was the Guardian Scholars Director at UCR. And he was like, I see your interest in University of California, Riverside. I just want to let you know that I'm reaching out from a foster youth program that will assist you when you come out to college if you want to be a part of it. And I remember telling him, no, I'm not going to go anymore. Thank you for calling. I'm going to stay out here and just get a job. And he was like, oh, okay. He's like, can I ask why? And I was like, this guy, like, want to know my business. And I was like, well, if you must know, I was like, I have 2 siblings that I need to take care of. And, I just don't think, college is for me. And I remember him saying, how do you expect to take care of them if you can't take care of yourself? And if you don't get an education to get a better paying job, how do you expect for them to be okay? And I just kind of stayed silent and thought about it. And I told him I'll get back to him. And then from there was lots of email communications, lots of phone calls. I didn't realize how far Riverside is from Wilmington, which it's not super far. It's like an hour. But the first time I drove out here, I thought it was the furthest thing ever because I had never been anywhere further.
This is totally new to you. Sure.
Yeah, I thought it took all day to get here. And so I remember we were planning to meet, and I was like, I don't have anyone who can take me, and I need to, see where I'm going to be and, figure out how am I going to pay for this, and is my brother and sister going to be okay? And so there was a lot of communication between us that really helped to get me to college.
And so once you decided, I'm going to move forward with this, I'm going to go to UC Riverside, pick up the story at that point, because you didn't have stable housing once you got to college. I mean, it's almost hard to even wrap your head around the fact that someone could be pursuing a college degree and homeless, but that's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah. The whole moving situation didn't seem like it was something new to me. I was like, oh yeah, I move constantly. Like, this isn't going to be any different. And I felt like beside my brother and my sister, I had nothing to lose. I was like, if things don't work out, I'm just homeless in a different city. And so the toughest part of when I graduated and from those few weeks that I was trying to get ready to go out to UCR, the hardest thing was just thinking, I'm not telling my brother and my sister where I'm going, and I'm going to hope that they're going to be okay, and I'm going to take some time to, take care of what will make me better, right? Which at that point I was like, it's education. And the hardest decision was leaving without telling them. And so it was really hard to think that for once I'm going to feel fully alone, because they weren't going to be there with me. And so even though at this point, right, we had felt pretty alone in the world, I always knew I could count on them. And I've always said it, nobody understands my pain more than my sister, because we experienced it together. But at this point, I was going to be alone, and I was going to experience other things that, she was going to have no idea about. And there was nobody I was going to be able to talk to about it. And so I was like, is this education worth it? And I just kind of left on a whim, and someone from the nonprofit was like, I will drive you out there. You can put your stuff in my tiny bug. And I was like, no worries. I was like, I don't have a lot. And so I had a bag of books. I remember my high school teacher, she wrote in them, and she was like, whenever you feel like you need to escape from the world, she's like, read one of these books. And I came out with a bag of books and a bag of clothes. And
did you know that you were not going to have housing?
I had told her I was going to be fine. I was going to figure it out. I didn't want to let UCR know that I didn't have housing. And I knew I couldn't afford student housing, and I wasn't fully okay taking out the loans for it. And I was like, I'll figure it out once I'm there. And I remember her just saying, you know, if you need anything, call me. And I knew I wasn't going to call, you know. I was I'm going to figure it out.
Right. But is there the pride that you were dealing with? Like, I don't want to make that call. That's painful to talk about, that this is the situation I'm in.
Right. To just let people know that, you know, you're homeless. And even the term homelessness, right? Like, I've never told anybody like, oh, I'm up until the point that I got this job with the continuum of care, right? I didn't say I was homeless. I was like, oh, you know, I was just going through tough times, right? That's what I called it. I was like, oh, I'm going through tough times. Everybody goes through tough times. And even when I realized, you know, I have nowhere to go, I would just be like, oh, it's okay. Like, last night was rough, but, you know, today I'm going to go stay here, or you know, I had this whole plan. And then I realized it wasn't okay to spend all my day thinking about where am I going to be later on, you know, or when I pass by somewhere to be like, oh, that's a good place to sleep tonight, or that's a good place to, you know, be. And then it's close to my class, and it's close to, you know, the bus stop. And it was like, wow, like, these are the things that I'm thinking about.
You would sleep on campus?
Yeah. So before I went into a transitional housing program, I was like, you know, if I could just make it until I start summer school, and then, you know, I'll make some friends, I'll stay with them. I was like, I'm going to be fine. And that's how I was like, this is how I'm going to go through college. And then I realized, you know, being on campus, I was like, it's fine. Like, I'm gonna keep my stuff in my backpack. I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'm gonna stay close to my classes, you know, and I'm gonna tell my peers I live on campus. So I was literally living on campus. And then I finally just shared with Kenya, and I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't live with student housing. I don't live on campus, you know. I don't know where to go. And
this went on for how long?
For like a month. I was like, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm homeless. I was like, you know, I'm at college. Like, I should be grateful for being here. Like, there's no way I'm going to start asking for, you know, housing resources or assistance. Like, you know, I can do this. And I just couldn't.
Well, what do you think it was that kept you for so long to ask for help, to ask for those resources?
It's the stereotypes, right, of like, people choose to be homeless, or, you know, you're homeless because you can't afford, you know, to pay for somewhere, or you don't have the financial means to pay for somewhere, and, you know, then you have to basically suffer, right? And just knowing that I had dealt with housing instability all my life, it became the norm, right? It was normal to not have somewhere to go, right? It became not normal when I had somewhere to be, and I didn't have to worry about these things like, where am I going to sleep, and is my backpack big enough for all my stuff, and, you know, what if somebody finds out? And then it's that feeling of, am I failing if I ask for help? Am I not doing it on my own? Am I not surviving enough? Am I not trying enough? And then the possible retaliation from people, or the possible comments, or the judgment that comes with it, right? If someone's like, oh my God, like, you're homeless, like, then how are you a student? Or, you know, you didn't think about that before you came, or, you know, you don't have money. And it was those things that I didn't want to deal with. And so at the end of the day, right, it was that same mentality that I've always had, that, you know, it's okay, being homeless isn't too bad, you know? And then finally I just couldn't do it anymore.
Right. And I was going to jump in and ask you, there was a turning point for you where you said, I need to ask for help to get into transitional housing. What was it? What was that light bulb that went off, and how did that process go for you?
When I was in college, I interned with the Homeless Solutions Department for Riverside, and it was at City Hall. It was my first official internship. I was so happy to be there, and I remember I had a boss, great guy, very knowledgeable about homelessness, and was always trying to create change. And he had this idea of a housing first model, which said, you know, how do we want people to get clean if they don't have housing? How do we want people to become sober if they don't have housing? How do we want, you know, people to regain custody of their children if they don't have housing? So it was this housing first model that always stuck with me, because it reminded me of that turning point when I was in college, that I said, how am I supposed to study and get ready for school, and how am I supposed to get a job, and how am I supposed to, survive and focus on my academics and, and gaining experience when I don't have anywhere to live. And so when he was talking about the housing first model, I told him, I said, that's true, like, how do we want people to focus on the other aspects of life when they don't have somewhere safe to sleep at night? They don't have somewhere to put their stuff. They don't have a space, to call home. And
that happened before you made the decision, I'm going to ask for help. Like that was the catalyst.
Yeah. I remember thinking, about that housing first model. I was like, how am I supposed to do all these other things if I don't have housing? And then I was like, how am I supposed to bring my brother and my sister if I don't have housing? I was like, gosh darn it, Monique, like the first thing you said you were going to come out here to do was get housing. And the first thing we did was get an education, get a job. I said, and where are we going to live? And so I finally shared that with Kenyon. And I remember.
And who is that you shared it with whom?
With Kenyon Whitman, who was the director for Guardian Scholars. And he was just like, that's what we're here for. That's what our program is for. It's to support youth, not just in their academics, but he's like, anything and everything that you might need, because we realize that, you don't have that family support or the parental support. He's like, who's gonna, take you all to the dentist if you guys have an emergency, which later I did end up having an emergency that I needed some assistance with. But I realized that I needed to count on them and do my part, of course. I was like, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to try, and I'm going to get straight A's in school, and I'm going to do everything possible to one day help youth who are in my situation. And just, I realized soon that there were so many other youth like me. So this program consisted of I think almost 25 to 30 youth when I was there. And so this cohort, which were the youth that were starting college with me, who were in a very similar situation, those are the people that I leaned with, and they became my family. They helped me. They let me know that they were going through the exact same situation. I met youth who also had siblings, youth who had no family, youth who were trying to get through college and working multiple jobs, youth who were also experiencing homelessness. And they were like, there's this resource and we can go get food here. And there was so many resources on campus, and Riverside County just had, a lot to offer. And if it wasn't for Guardian Scholars, to just put us in those paths and in communication with some of those resources, like the transitional housing program that I ended up living in, I don't know, it started with the light bulb of, it's okay to ask for help, and you got to have housing before you do anything else. And then it was just that whole learning to lean on people and trust that, the people around me were going to help me succeed.
So they got you an apartment?
So the transitional housing program that I lived in was a home, and it was an all girls home, and it was 2 girls per room. So I shared a room with another girl who now is my best friend. She became, my best friend just from the experience, just from having like that housing instability and feeling like we need housing. So we're going to join this program, but this isn't really my home, and there's nobody here who I know. And, it was that feeling. And then
a connection through a lived experience.
Right. And she had came out from LA, and I was like, I'm from out there, and I know exactly what it was to experience these things then. And, we shared a lot of those personal experiences. And yeah, to today, she's my best friend.
We have so much more of this. This is a great conversation, by the way. Thank you, for participating in it. We have a lot more of it still ahead. Monique has used her lived experience to help others in her job with Riverside County. And coming up, she's going to talk about her advocacy for youth in crisis and how all of us can take action. Stay with us. We're back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. The point in time count is at the end of February in Riverside County. This is an annual count of sheltered and unsheltered homeless individuals on a single day, and there's also a separate count over 3 days for homeless youth. Now, in Riverside County, we counted 2,155 unsheltered adults in 2020 and 326 youth, those are youth ages 18 to 24, who were homeless in 2020. Monique's back with us. You think it's more than the 326?
Yeah, there is more, of course. There's those that are students, right, who are probably looking for a program to hang out at during the day, or, looking for a friend to stay on their couch during the night. There are definitely more than just that number, right? And then there's the youth that don't want to be counted. There's the youth that we don't catch because they're moving around, right? And youth don't want to be considered homeless, so they're going to do everything possible to blend in, to find shelter, and to just not be counted, right? Especially knowing that we survey them and right, sometimes we just walk away. So this year, I really like that we're putting on events that will bring the youth not only to be surveyed about their housing situation, but also to be connected to resources and hopefully get them into housing that day. So we know that there's more.
Right, and those are the come and be counted events?
The come and be connected events.
Come and be
yes.
connected, thank you.
So we really want to bring them and tell them, come, we want to survey you, but we want you all to be connected. And they're going to be events in every district, right? So youth can go to the event that's in their district that's closest to them. They can reach out if they can't make any of these events, but we're hoping to bring vendors over the span of a few days. So, right, from January 26th to January 27th, all the way into January 28th.
Okay, all 3 days.
Right. So the 26th to the 28th, we're going to have an event in each district, and they are at TAY centers, right? So transitioning age youth can come and be welcomed at a center that already operates to assist them. And so we're going to have vendors that will help them with housing, right? Medi-Cal, CalFresh, anything that they qualify for, hopefully, get them into a shelter bed and then into permanent supportive housing from there. We're going to have food, raffles. There's going to be, warm items. Mm-hmm. We're going to give them incentive bags after we survey them, which will have, beanies, gloves, socks, anything warm. We've been collecting, jackets and blankets and stuff. So.
Resources to support them.
Right.
Okay. And if people want to learn more about those come and be connected events, they can go to the website morethanacount.org. There's some information about there, I believe, on the site. We're going to talk more about point in time count, by the way, in just a second. But I want to jump to after UC Riverside. You now work for Riverside County for the continuum of care, as we talked about at the top of the podcast. How do you advocate for youth that are experiencing homelessness in your job using that lived experience you've had?
So, yeah, I'm really fortunate to be in my position. It was a position where they were looking for someone who had some experience and can really, advocate for youth. And I remember working with Laura Gonzalez, who, is doing all the point in time count items and getting everything ready. I had met her through United Way, and I joined her youth action board. And I remember her saying, this is a board ran by youth that have, lived experience with homelessness. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I want to create change somehow. And I remember going to these meetings and feeling like, if I could do something like this where, I can gather a group of youth, and not only, right, as someone who really sympathizes, right, with everyone, I was like, I need to let them know that there are resources and I can help them if they need help going to college or getting housing. And so surprisingly, fast forward a year later, she told me about the position and I applied. And as
You're
soon
a
as
youth
I got
mentor?
in,
Is that your job?
So I'm a homeless youth specialist, mm-hmm. and I also run a youth action board. So what Laura was doing is now what I do, and we have a good group of youth who have lived experience and are doing great things to advocate and be a part of the youth point in time count. as well as providing youth in the community resources. So we've done anything from making a youth resource directory to putting on events to tabling at schools to now really gathering incentives for the youth point in time count. And so a lot of my job is advocating, one, by helping the youth find their voice and help them advocate, and making them a part of these conversations and change for youth homelessness and services. And then the other part of my job is really making sure that I can be of assistance, whether it's sharing my experience or letting everyone know about the resources in Riverside County.
So tell us how someone from the public could help a youth in crisis, because I think it may be hard for people to feel like they can even spot. How do you even spot a youth who's homeless?
Right. So kind of like I was sharing, I don't think I ever wanted people to know, right? And that's the tough part is, right, youth want to feel like they're resilient and they can just, they'll survive. But you can spot youth that have oversized backpacks, right? Usually, it's the layered clothes, it's the multiple bags that they're carrying. And sometimes, right, I think for the day of the count, which is going to be January 26th, 27th, and 28th from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., we really are encouraging that our volunteers ask just, hey, can we survey you about your housing status or your housing situation? And then, if we ask the first question, which is, where did you sleep last night? And they're like, oh, in my house. Then, okay, thank you so much. And then, right, keep it pushing. But you never know who is homeless or who isn't. So, right, asking doesn't hurt. And if, they're like, oh, I slept on the street last night, then, we can ask. But there are just those few signs, right? Sometimes youth are well dressed and, maybe their backpack is light because they're keeping stuff with a friend. So, we encourage to just ask the question, of where did you sleep last night? But I would encourage everyone to register to become a volunteer if you can for those days, right, the 26th through the 28th. Yeah,
and that's specifically that because I want to make this clear to our listeners out there. So the point in time count, there's counts. There's one that's on, I believe it's January 26th solely for counting homeless adults. But what you're referring to is the 3-day youth count.
Yeah. So definitely register for both counts if you can, right? Or if you're interested in the youth count, you can still register. So go to www.morethanacount.org and you'll see the volunteer registration. You'll take some training. It'll really prepare you to use the app that we're going to use to survey individuals, as well as just preparing you for some of those signs to look at when it comes to homeless youth. So if you want to register, please register. The general count is Wednesday, January 26th from 5:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And then the youth count will be over the span of 3 days, January 26th, 27th, and 28th from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. And you can go to the morethanacount.org website, and on there you'll see the youth registration as well. Or you can go to youthcount.morethanacount.org to just see the youth information. But that info is all on the same website.
Okay. Talk to us about, why is this count important? Why would someone who's listening to this right now want to be part of this?
I think now having so many resources available, so many individuals who really want to help, and so many programs, right, that can assist youth with getting them housed, I think it's crucial for everyone to participate, because if you encounter youth and you're able to help them, right, that's one less youth on the street. That's one less youth who's going to become a chronic, homeless individual when they grow up or when they become adults.
And the count is a snapshot, right? It's basically a single snapshot, literally a point in time of what homelessness is like on a given day. And this helps with funding, correct?
Right. So if there is a need in our community, right, and we have those numbers to show it, and we've done an accurate count, and, we've encountered lots of youth who need assistance, right, then, yeah, that definitely helps our funding.
The data goes to the federal government.
Right, because they're the ones asking for it.
And they determine the funding for homeless services then in Riverside County?
For our county. And so, right, even though they don't think couch surfing, right, counts as homelessness, which it should, right? If you don't have a home of your own and a space of your own, you can only be a guest in someone's home for so long. But we're collecting that data so that not only are we helping those that are homeless, but if you're couch surfing, right, we want to help you. We want to get you housed, and we want to get you connected to resources. So yeah, it's really just taking this, general number of how many individuals are homeless, how many youth are homeless in our county, and filling in those gaps of where can we service, what areas need more assistance or resources, where are youth sleeping, where, why are they becoming homeless, and, getting them to the right program.
And in terms of the youth count specifically, what are you looking for in a volunteer? Are there some certain qualities that you ask for?
Yeah. So, right. By letting you know that we are being very cautious with, authorities, right, and how we bring them out to the count, right? We don't want an overwhelming presence of police officers, right, when we're going to go and approach a young person and ask them about their housing situation. We're also asking them, if they can't be, is there any way that you can not wear your uniform, but accompany us? Or, we're good. I think if we have a good team of volunteers, we don't need the authorities, right? Because young people don't need to feel criminalized because they're homeless, right? It's unfortunate circumstances. And, we're looking for those individuals that fit some really easygoing qualities, right? So we encourage outreach workers, right? Those that are teachers that work with students and youth, program counselors, homeless coordinators or student, coordinators and specialists, people that, can approach a young person and can have a conversation with them, about their situation. And then, as a team, we really want to encourage our volunteers to work together and to lean on the people around for resources. And we want to connect the young people to housing, right? So anyone who, has any resources works for a program. So we're encouraging all of our partners, all of the people that work for agencies and organizations that provide housing or homeless services. So we really encourage just people that are easygoing, that can have a conversation with these young people.
Okay. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you? I know we talked about so much, and we're going to share some more information in just a moment about how people can sign up for both the general point in time count as well as the youth point in time count. But anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up that I didn't ask you?
Yeah, I just want to add that, we need to get over the stereotypes of what homelessness is and what that looks like. And we need to, one, accept that there is a homeless problem in our county, right? And I want everyone to know that the Continuum of Care and Riverside County is doing an amazing job at really, focusing on programs and resources and getting people housed. And right, as we know, there's more individuals that need housing than there are housing units. So, right, we have that issue. And I want to encourage, right, landlords and anyone who rents, right? I know that it's a risk to let young people rent, but if it wasn't for the amazing people that have rented to me, right, and that have trusted me, to pay my rent on time, regardless of my age, right? Even now at my age, right, I'm still struggling to find another unit, right? Whether it's because of credit or co-signers, right? But if young people are trying and they have some income and, they're asking you for the opportunity, I would really encourage you to take that opportunity, and take that chance to really help someone, get some stable housing and start that path, to a better life. And, I want us all to think about how homelessness can happen to anyone at any point in life, right? If you lose your job, if you lose a family member, if you were in foster care, right? There are so many factors that play a role in homelessness. And so it's not just somebody chooses to, or, someone has a substance abuse issue. Things happen in life and unfortunate circumstances. And, people become homeless within a blink of an eye. Anything can go wrong, anything can happen and put you in a bad place. So, I really encourage everyone to help. If you can rent to someone, if you can offer a blanket on the street, if you can participate in our point in time count, if you want to donate items, if you want to sponsor a youth, just really putting yourself in that position of, if this were me, if this were my family member, if this were my child, and to really help, because, we never know people's stories and we never know where people come from.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the service station and for being just so forthcoming with your story and sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me here. And, you know, at the end of the day, like I told you before, Jane, when I leave, you know, I leave hoping that everyone will listen, hoping that everyone will have a change of heart, hoping that, right, we'll think about homelessness differently and, you know, we'll encourage people to assist our youth so that they don't become chronic homeless adults. But at the end of the day, everybody here leaves with a piece of my story. So I really hope that people take my story and, you know, do great things. So thank you so much for having me and allowing me to, in a way, heal, right, in this process of sharing my story. It's taken a really long time to get to this point, to be okay sharing this, you know, and knowing that there are other people that experience a very similar situation. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, right, even if we can't provide anything physically, just offering people hope and encouragement. So thank you so much for having me on here.
It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it. The point in time count is happening from February 23rd to the 25th, and community volunteers are needed. You can learn more and sign up to participate by visiting this website, morethanacount.org. I'll give it to you again. It's morethanacount.org. For the general point in time count, hundreds of volunteers are needed. Training is required. It's also provided, and the volunteers must have a smartphone or a tablet to conduct the survey and be able to walk for 2 hours. Now, anyone 16 and over can volunteer, but please note that 16 and 17-year-olds need to be accompanied by an adult. That'll do it. That'll wrap up this episode of The Service Station. You can find English and Spanish episodes on all major podcast platforms, also on our website as well, rivcodpss.org. Again, rivcodpss.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, all at rivcodpss. Thanks so much for listening.